So you recently purchased a new Canon EOS R5. Awesome, congratulations, so did I. And right now, assuming your pockets aren't completely empty from buying the camera, you may be thinking about picking up some accessories. If you are, you're in the right place, because in this video today, I'm going to be sharing with you a bunch of accessories for the R5. Batteries, cables, cards, adapters, you name it. I'm going to cover it in this video today. Stick around. Good to see you, as always. My name is Todd Dominey. Just so you know, I predict this video today may be a little long because I intend to include as many accessories as I possibly can. But if you need to skip around, feel free to do so. The timeline below is organized by accessories, so you can jump forward and backward if you need to. But for everyone else, especially if you are new to the EOS R5 or just new to Canon cameras in general, I would recommend sticking with this video from beginning to end, because in addition to the accessories, I'm also going to be sharing with you some technical information about the R5 itself. So let's begin with one of the most important accessories, because without this, you can't do anything with the camera, talking about batteries, cables, and power adapters. The EOS R5 is like any other camera in that it comes with a single rechargeable battery. If you are a legacy Canon user, if you've been using Canon cameras for a while, you may not pay any attention to this battery because it appears to be just a regular LP battery, the same LP batteries that Canon cameras have been using for many years. Well, in fact, this is a different battery, because if you flip it over and look at the model number on the back, you will see that it is an LP E6NH. Other compatible LP batteries include the LP E6N and the LP E6. All three batteries work just fine in the EOS R5. So what's the difference between these batteries? Well, perhaps more than you may expect. Beginning with milliamp hour capacity. The LP E6NH has the highest milliamp hour capacity compared to the LP E6N and the LP E6. Generally speaking, the higher the milliamp hour capacity number, the longer the battery will power the camera. Additionally, both the E6NH and the E6N are needed in order to take full advantage of the R5's high-speed continuous shooting mode. In that mode, and with one of these batteries, you can achieve 12 frames per second, whereas with the older LP E6 battery, you can only achieve 8 frames per second. And for sports photographers, wedding photographers, wildlife photographers, I mean, anyone who just really depends on that high-speed continuous shooting mode, you need a newer battery. You need to be using either the NH or the N and not the older LPE6 so that you get 4 additional frames per second. And then finally, both the NH and the N can be charged inside the R5 with a powered USB-C cable connected to the camera. The older LPE6 batteries cannot be charged in camera. Now, speaking of charging the batteries in camera, in order to do so, you have to have a powered USB-C connection with the camera. Now, the unfortunate and confusing thing about this is that when you search for information about how to charge those batteries in camera, Canon is not exactly all that forthcoming with information or helpful with information about it. Because when you look it up, all they do is refer you to their own adapter, which is called the PDE1. Now, I don't fault Canon for coming out with their own cable, putting their name on it, making it officially supported, and charging a premium for it. I mean, every manufacturer does this to some degree. However, the PDE1 at the time of this video retails for, are you ready for this? $140. And the reason I think it's kind of ridiculous is because it's just a standard USB-C powered connection, and that's it. And you may actually already own something that you can use. For example, this has probably been a bit of foreshadowing here for a while, but you can absolutely use this. This is just a standard MacBook Pro power charger. This works fine. I also tested it with a Chromebook laptop charger, a Windows laptop charger, plugged it into an iMac, plugged it into a MacBook. They all charge the batteries in the R5 as well. But if you need to go out and buy an adapter, what you need to look for is a USB-C power bank or power adapter, something that provides power through its USB-C port. And you can tell because it will contain power delivery in its title or its description, or one of the ports on the adapter will have PD stamped underneath it. And then you know that that is not just providing data, it's also providing power as well. The second thing to watch out for is to make sure that whatever it is that you get is at least 45 watts or higher. In other words, you can't, use one of these little like mobile phone charger kind of adapters. These don't have enough power. 45 watts of power or higher and you should be good. Now, once you have the R5 connected, in order to charge the battery, you have to turn the camera off. And you'll know that the batteries are charging because there's a green light which will appear underneath the scroll wheel on the back of the camera. And you should also see a battery icon on the LCD display on top. If you then power on the camera with a powered USB-C cable connected, the internal battery will stop charging. It will no longer charge. What's happening in this mode now is that the power that is coming through the USB-C port is supplementing the power being provided by the battery. It's not replacing the battery, it's just supplementing it with additional power so that then the battery drains slower than it would otherwise. And this is the reason why you have to have a battery inside the camera in order for the R5 to be powered through that USB outlet. If you want to use the R5 continuously without having to mess around with batteries, then instead of powering the camera through the USB-C port, it's better to buy a battery compartment adapter. And the one that I've been using is one, I think it's made by a company named UURig. I think I'm pronouncing that right, but I bought one for my 5D Mark IV a few years ago, and it works perfectly fine in the R5 too. It's basically just a dummy battery that you insert into the camera, and then you plug it in, and then the camera runs continuously. All right, so that was a lot about batteries, cables, and power adapters, but obviously power is an important part of using the camera, so hopefully you learned something new in that segment. Now, if you've been watching my channel recently, you will remember that I actually made an entire video about EF and EFS lens adapters for Canon's new RF mirrorless lens mount. Man, that's a mouthful. The mount that's found in the R5, the R6, the EOS R, RP, and their new C70 cinema camera. It's an important topic, so I made an entire video about it because there are 4 different adapters that are made by Canon, an additional third-party one that is made by Viltrox, which is the one that I've been using, and a new one that's going to be coming out soon you may not be aware of or have read about, that is made by Breakthrough Photography. That is definitely worth checking out. If you want to learn more about that, I will link to that video up here above, and I'll provide a link down below. All right, speaking of Breakthrough Photography, the next R5 accessory was recently sent to me by them, and it comes in this little metal tin. What do you think this is? Well, let's find out. Inside this tin is a custom-made Arca Swiss plate designed especially for the EOS R5, and it also happens to be compatible with the R6 and the older EOS R as well. And by custom made, what I mean is that at the end of the plate, there's a little metal pin that sticks up down here at the bottom. The pin is inserted into a hole in the bottom of the camera, and it keeps the camera from doing that thing where sometimes it happens where, especially when the camera's been on a plate on top of a tripod for a while, sometimes it gets a little loose and the camera will start to turn and it may start to kind of wobble around a little bit on the plate, which is not only dangerous because the camera might fall off the tripod, but it's also kind of a pain because you have to take it off and then retighten it and then mount everything back again. Whereas with this helps prevent that from even happening in the first place because this pin helps prevent that lateral turn of the camera and becoming unthreaded. It has all these cutaways in here, all these openings all the way around the plate. They minimized the amount of anodized aluminum that was used to create the plate and reduced it as much as they possibly could without negatively impacting the rigidity of the plate. So you end up with a plate that's just as strong as a regular plate, but it is noticeably lighter. So if you are like a landscape photographer, someone who's backpacking and you're always concerned about weight, this is a really nice option to have. Now, the other cool thing about this plate that I happen to like for some reason is the fact that Breakthrough Photography is selling these as if they are like limited edition fine art prints. Because if you flip the plate over and look on the back, there is an edition number that is etched into the aluminum. And mine happens to be 17 out of 100, which I guess makes me the 17th person to own one of these. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think that's kind of cool. Breakthrough does guarantee that these plates are compatible with any Arca ball head that you may already own. So if for some reason you have a problem with it and it doesn't work with the particular Arca head that you have, then it's guaranteed and you can send it back. The EOS R5 includes 2 memory card slots, one for SD and one for CFExpress Type B. Which card type you choose to use really depends on the type of content you are creating and how important fast read-write speeds are for your workflow. So for example, if you are a still photographer and you already own some SD cards, there's really no reason to go out and buy new SD cards unless you currently own UHS 1 cards and you want to take advantage of the faster UHS 2 specification which the R5 supports. However, one thing that I would recommend is if data read-write speeds is really important to you, in other words, you want the fastest possible speed for getting your images off the card and onto your computer, the fastest way to do that is to use a CFExpress Type B card and to pick up one of these CFExpress Type B card readers for your computer. Yes, these cards are more expensive and you then have to buy an external reader, but the speed is so much faster than SD. If, on the other hand, you are shooting video, this is where things unfortunately get a little more complicated. With an SD card, even just a regular UHS 1 SD card, you can record in most of the video resolutions and formats that are supported by the R5. There is a ceiling, however, that you hit where the R5 will tell you, nope, you can't use SD, you have to use CFExpress Type B with your selected format. And that ceiling is 4K 60 frames per second using all-I compression. So if you want 4K 60 frames per second in all-I, that's the moment in which you have to switch to CFExpress Type B, or you can switch that compression to IPB and continue recording with the SD card. When you get up into a K resolution, then you have the option of, again, you can do IPB compression to the SD, or if you want all-I or that new RAW format, which is pretty crazy to shoot in if you haven't tried that, then you need CFExpress Type B. And then just to make things a little more complicated, there is a third option for recording video on the R5, and that is to do so externally through the mini HDMI port to an HDMI monitor recorder like the Atomos Ninja V, which is actually what I'm using right now because it is absolutely fantastic. You can record up to 4K, high quality 4K up to 60 frames per second. And that video, by the way, is 10-bit 422, and it's saved in the ProRes file format, which is easier to edit on most machines, including my late 2017 iMac here, than the compression and the file format that the R5 uses internally when recording video. Additionally, you also avoid that dreaded 30-minute time limit that all consumer cameras have when it comes to recording video, and you avoid the notorious overheating issue that you've probably heard a few things about when you're recording in high-quality 4K or higher on the R5 internally. When you record externally to a monitor like the Atomos Ninja, that problem goes away. But the thing that I love about the Ninja is the fact that it uses inexpensive internal SSD drives. You just put the drive inside of an enclosure, it slides onto the back of the monitor, and these drives per gigabyte are much cheaper than SD cards and especially CFExpress Type B. So if you need to shoot a lot of video, a lot of footage, and you don't want to be stocking up on a whole ton of CFExpress Type B cards, then recording externally to the Atomos Ninja is a really smart way to go, and it almost pays for itself. By the way, I have written a blog post that goes alongside this video if you would like to see a table that includes all the different video resolutions and which memory cards support each. I'll put a link to that down below in the description. All right, so continuing with the video theme, if you are someone who is planning on buying one of those Atomos Ninja Vs, or you've already done so, and you plan to use the R5 a fair bit for video, the next accessory is one that you should definitely consider investing in, and that is to pick up a cage. Now, if you've never seen one of these before, you can find cages for many different types of consumer cameras out there, and these are custom designed to fit each type of camera body, whichever one you may currently be using. And by custom designed, I mean that it wraps around the camera in such a way so that it doesn't block the just basic operation of the camera. So you're able to access your SD cards, your CFExpress Type B card slot over here, HDMI, USB-C over here, the battery, opening is down here. So once you put the R5 in here and you screw this down on the bottom, then you have this metal kind of apparatus going around the camera with all these different thread mounts all the way around, which you can use to be attaching microphones, attaching lights, or some of the accessories that I'm going to be getting to here in just a second. Now on the bottom of the cage, which is something I really like about it, is the fact that this is an Arca Swiss compatible mount down here. So when you have the cage on, you can just drop the camera into a ball head, lock it down, and you don't need to be attaching a tripod plate to it. This also has 2 pins on it to help stabilize the camera, very similar to that Breakthrough Photography custom Arca Swiss plate that I was talking about earlier in this video. So let's take a look at some accessories. So this is a SmallRig Nato rail handle, which goes on this SmallRig cage. Tighten it down, and then you have a top handle that you can use with the camera in here to be carrying it around. By the way, this is really, I know this is awkward that I don't have an R5 actually in here right now, but I'm filming with the R5, and yeah, buying another R5 just for demonstration purposes seemed a bit silly. Just use your imagination, or look at the B-roll that I'm going to be putting in here. What's cool about the handle, not only does this give you something to hold on to, but this also has 2 cold shoe mounts here on the top. This one over here is just kind of basic, but this one in the front has a locking mechanism. So when you slide a monitor onto the front here, like the Atomos Ninja V, it kind of gets locked in and it doesn't accidentally slide out, even if the connection gets loose. There's still an additional button here on the side that you have to push in order for the monitor to actually come off. Now, in addition to a top handle, another handle you might want to consider is a side grip like this. Now, this is the kind of thing that you could do left-handed or right-handed. You just have to switch the bracket here around. So now I have the grip attached, and this is so nice. It's so comfortable and easy to use when doing handheld video because you can just hold it in your left hand over here, and then grip the right side of the camera with its own grip that it has over here, instead of trying to hold on to the camera body like this. Like, this is so stable and secure, and it's just so fluid and nice. Now, of course, you can do it again with the top handle if you want to, but you have the option of switching back and forth when you have 2 different types of grips on the cage. The last accessory that I want to mention with the cage is an interesting one that could actually save you quite a bit of money. And that is a port protector that screws onto the cage that helps protect the USB-C and HDMI ports on the side of the R5. Now, in case you're wondering what's wrong with the ports, like why did they need to be secured? Well, because Canon decided to not use a full HDMI port on the R5. They instead decided to go with a mini HDMI port, which is really similar to a micro HDMI port. They're just smaller, they're more fiddly, and they're not as strong and grounded as a full HDMI port is. That cable has a tendency to kind of bend and flex in the port, which over time can wear down the port or possibly break the connecting pins inside of the port. That has actually happened to me a couple of times. And then you have to send the camera in, you have to get it repaired, get a new port installed when they could have just used an HDMI port from the get-go. But anyway, now this is also made by SmallRig, and this is designed for the SmallRig cage. You pass the cable through this accessory here, and then with this knob, you just tighten it down. And this kind of creates like a little extra support for the cable so that then it's not wiggling around, and it also doesn't pop out accidentally while you're shooting either. It's strong, it's secure, it doesn't bend or flex at all, and it helps protect the port. Now, the one thing I don't like about this particular SmallRig accessory, and I hope they redesign it at some point, is that it does encroach a little bit on the flap that's to the left of these ports, and that's where your mic jack is. And unfortunately, that means that when this is attached, it's really hard to open that mic flap. So I've kind of gotten in the habit of lifting the mic flap on the camera before putting the camera into the cage, so that then I'm able to access the microphone input. So if anyone from SmallRig is watching, I hope you have a chance to revisit the design of this at some point and make it fit the R5 a little bit better. So yeah, that was quite a lot, right? Hope you enjoyed the video. Everything I talked about is linked below in the description if you would like to follow up on anything, check the current price on anything. And by the way, there are some additional accessories that I'm adding links to down below that I did not talk about in the video. A few little miscellaneous things here and there you may be interested in for your new R5. If there are any additional accessories for the R5 I did not cover in this video that you would recommend that I check out, that other R5 owners check out, please feel free to jump into the comment section below and leave a comment. As for me, thanks for being here. I appreciate your time. I'll see you next week.